You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. I'm Ethan Haristadoulou, and it's Thursday, which means it is that time again. We start diving into picks for week number 8 of the NFL. Today, we're just doing Thursday Night Football. We'll have the rest of the picks out tomorrow, but we got the Minnesota Vikings heading on into Los Angeles to take on the Rams in an NFC clash. A pretty, oddly enough, like a tighter than I would have expected as far as like the betting companies seem to appear to think it's going to be. We'll dive into that. I'm not a gambler. I'm not one to place any bets, but I just find it odd that the line is so close the way it is. That being said, we've had a lot of crazy news come out this week about both the Vikings and the Rams and potential trades that could be made. One between the two that I can't really believe got around considering where the source actually came from. But fire away in that comment section. Let me hear your thoughts on tonight's matchup. Who do you like? Who's going to come out victorious? Now, that being said, we'll address like the rumor stuff first. Obviously, the big one was that the Vikings were potentially going to trade for Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford to try to make a run towards a Super Bowl with him. I don't really know where the credentials come from that people decided they were going to run with this story, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Things are working well with Sam Darnold. The Los Angeles Rams, while they are 2-4, are about to get Cooper Kupp back. They're about to get Puka Nacua back, and I know there's also rumors that the Rams have been open to trading Cooper Kupp as well. While that seems a lot more likely as far as trades go for the Rams, I don't think just completely emptying the cupboard is what the Rams want to do at this very moment. In my opinion, the trade would make sense. Like just stepping back from whether it's an actual legit rumor or not, it makes sense in terms of getting like a legit franchise guy to come in with that offense over in Minnesota. Kevin O'Connell coming from the Sean McVay coaching tree. Like the whole idea makes a lot of sense. It's not like it's a vastly different offense or anything. So I'd be excited to see it happen, but I call BS, and it seems like a lot of other people do as well. That being said, for the actual matchup itself, though, the Vikings heading into LA to take on the Rams, I think the first thing that I'm looking at is going to be if the Rams can protect Matthew Stafford against this vaunted Vikings front. They are first in pressure rate this season, third in sacks. They love to blitz the quarterback. They currently lead the league in overall blitz rate. And for what it's worth, Matthew Stafford, who's actually been pretty good against pressure for the vast majority of his time in LA, has been struggling this year. Currently sitting at a completion rate at about 46%, only averaging 6.5 yards per attempt and a quarterback rating of 52.2 with 2 picks and not a single touchdown. He has not been great facing the pressure. It's one of those things that's very bizarre because for a large majority of Matthew Stafford's career, and like if you think back to like their Super Bowl run, this dude was money when it came to dealing against the pressure. He loved when the pressure came at him because he was getting that ball out quick to one of his hot receivers and they were going. So definitely one of those things to keep an eye on here. I'm worried that if the Rams O-line, still kind of banged up, isn't able to protect him, the way the Vikings play defense could pose an issue for them. Second thing I'm looking at here is, of course, as we mentioned earlier, Cooper Kupp. He is set to be back in play tonight, and it sounds like he's going to have a significant piece within the offense. And if I know Matthew Stafford, he loves to feed his top guy. We've seen it with him during his time in LA with Cooper Kupp. We saw it last season while Cooper Kupp was out for a bulk of the season, and he was feeding Puka Nacua. And we saw it, obviously, during his time in Detroit when he had Calvin Johnson. So he loves to feed his lead guy here. Minnesota right now, for a lot of the strengths that this defense has, they do tend to let teams move a lot through the air. They've actually allowed the third most passing yards per game at about 260, but the reason it hasn't really killed them is because they have a very aggressive room in that as far as like corners and safeties go, and they love to go after the football, and they have 11 interceptions on the season, which actually leads the league. So there is like a There's like a catch-22 to all that. Yes, the Vikings have been letting teams move through the air. Matthew Stafford, obviously a slinger, not afraid to put that football out there, but it is a possibility that someone could be jumping a route or two, so he's got to be good on his decision-making here, and I'm curious to see how Cooper Kupp can maybe open things up for the Rams, because the offense really needs a good passing game to start going here if they want to have any shot at doing anything with this season, sitting at 2-4. I'm also curious to see how the run looks against Minnesota for the Rams here. Obviously, them having Kyren Williams, stud of a running back. He's been having a really good season to this point here with over 430 yards so far. And on top of that, he's got 8 rushing touchdowns to boot. But Minnesota, they are the second best run defense in the league. They look stout up front. And again, and part of it has to do with just the amount of blitz that they send on I feel like a per down basis. They are just always sending multiple guys. The box gets stacked or the holes fill up quickly, either one. And right now, ranked second in rushing yards per game. And they've only allowed 3 total touchdowns through their first 6 games of the season. That's going to be an issue for the Rams. And I feel like one thing when it comes to LA and their offense, if they aren't running the football super well, play action gets closed up. And then from there, it's basically just like Matthew Stafford slinging the football. And you don't want to fall into that. You want to be able to get the things that you need going on the ground for the Rams to be successful offensively. But Minnesota, they ain't no slouch on defense, and when it comes to stopping the run, they are the literal second best in the NFL at doing so. And on top of that, they don't let teams get in the end zone either when they get into that red zone there. They do not, especially on the ground. And then finally, the last thing I'm looking at here, and one that I think is going to pose a potential mismatch for the Rams defensively, is going to be how the Rams plan on defending Justin Jefferson. Now, per Next Gen Stats, they had some really good information on this one here that I thought was really interesting and I had to bring up for this. The Los Angeles Rams have been running a ton of man coverage, especially the last 3 weeks, with about 40% of pass plays being defended by man coverage. The reason I bring this up is because Justin Jefferson right now leads the league in total yards against man coverage and is also tied for first with 4 touchdowns, with only Drake London against that same man coverage. The reason I'm bringing all this up is because Justin Jefferson, obviously one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, a guy that can beat just about anyone he's lined up against, and clearly we have seen that from him so far this season, is going to be a problem for guys like Darius Williams, Kobe Durant, and those guys in the cornerback room of the Los Angeles Rams to be lining up across from him. And I'm curious to see how they wind up splitting that assignment, because you can't just I don't really know why teams would want to just line up a singular guy against Justin Jefferson. Like, you're going to have to use some sort of coverage to keep him in check, because if you're just lining up a single guy on him and it's not one of the top corners in the league, more than likely you're going to get burned. You're going to get got. I mean, Justin Jefferson is who he is. He's one of the best wide receivers in the game, one of the cleanest route runners into the game. He knows how to deal with whoever he's going up against, and he always gets his fair share more often than not. So, I mean, whether it's going to be like a split assignment thing, or if one of those 2 guys I had mentioned, whether it's Williams or Durant, are just finding themselves covering Justin Jefferson for the vast majority of the game, I'll be really curious to see whose responsibility it is to make sure that Justin Jefferson isn't going for 100+ yards and maybe a score or 2. A few other things to keep in mind. Injuries, of course, always got to make sure we touch on these here. For the Rams, we're looking at a few guys already listed as out in linebackers. Troy Reader. You also have Joe Noteboom, the tackle. He's listed out as well. And you have some questionables in defensive end Braden Fisk, D tackle Neville Gallimore, and then also wide receiver Puka Nacua is listed as questionable. It seems like he's probably not going to play this week, but that is something to keep an eye on here. You also have Tre'Davious White, who was just getting rested, not like dealing with any injury or anything like that, but he is on the report as not participating, but it sounds like he's fine. It was just a resting thing, so not anything to worry about. If you see him on the injury report, he should be good to go. And then on the Vikings side of things, the only guy that they have listed right now is currently linebacker Blake Cashman as out, but there are a couple of other guys listed as questionable as well. You got Dalton Reisner. TJ Hawkinson's working his way back from an injury, so him being on the team, if he's available, would be huge, but probably not going to be the case considering he's been limited all week. But if he does play, that adds another wrinkle to the Vikings offense that the Rams have to defend here. So could be an issue if he does wind up playing just as a guy on the field. Even if he doesn't have a massive impact on the game, he's someone you have to commit assets to defensively if he's going to be on the football field, because you have to respect what he can do. And then, of course, cornerback Caleb Evans as well is also listed as questionable. So there are some guys to keep an eye on both sides of the football field. Aaron Jones, another one as well, but I think he should be good to go. I'm not too worried about him. He was limited Tuesday, full participant Wednesday. Sounds like he's going to be good to go. But just keep an eye on some of those injuries. For those of you that like to play the betting game, just make sure you know who could be missing the game. As for who actually winds up winning this matchup here, again, I kind of brushed on it earlier. I'm not a betting person, and I don't gamble and things like that. I just love making picks, love talking football with you all. But the big thing for me is I'm interested in why the spread is so close with this game. The last I checked, it's only Vikings -3. Now I know you get the 3 points as a home team so the Rams were technically -3, and it swung all the way to -3 Vikings. But I would think that this would be wider considering the current state of just the injuries that the Rams have been dealing with and the struggles that they've had both offensively and defensively for the most part this season here. And like the Vikings, yeah, they're coming off a tough loss, but they've been rolling pretty well for the entirety of the season. Like even in that loss, still looked like a really strong team despite the loss. So I'm curious to see why it's so close, but I guess we'll find out tonight. For my score, for who I think is going to win, I like the Vikings. I think they get the job done, and I think they get the job done fairly comfortably. Like I understand that, Sean McVay being the guy that Kevin O'Connell comes from coaching tree-wise, that might be something, but for me personally, I just think that the offense that they have over there in Minnesota right now has an awful lot going for them. Sam Darnold is playing well enough that Justin Jefferson's eating. You also have guys like Jordan Addison that are eating. And again, if TJ Hawkinson does manage to suit up tonight, that's just another guy you have to respect. Aaron Jones in the backfield. Offensive lines are really good. I just think it's a little too much for the Rams to defend. So I'll take the Vikings. I have them 27-17. Should be a fun and entertaining contest, but I feel like it's one of those things where like the Vikings might pull away late comfortably and then walk their way to a victory. So give me Minnesota and a comfortable win over there. But that's my thoughts for Thursday Night Football. Remember, tomorrow we'll have the entire slate of games for Sunday and Monday. We'll be breaking down each and every single one, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on that. But that is it for me. If you made it to the end, as always, greatly appreciate it. I'll catch you all next time. Have a good one.